We're KNS Brakes. Today we have a C8 Z51 Corvette in the shop. This car is owned by Kaizen Autosport, who does track rentals up at Virginia International Raceway. They're preparing for their first day on track with this car. So we're going to swap in some brake pads front and rear. We have some G-Lock R12 compounds to put in the car. So we're going to go over the install a bit. There's a couple of things we've read about, so we want to see what we're looking at. And just quickly, if you've got the Corvette on the lift, it's always going to be a bit of an adventure. The cars are so low. The C8's a little different. When you first look under the side sill, you're going to see two small holes. Those are not the jack points. Those are tie-down locations. The ovals that you're used to are present. They're a little further spread out, and of course more towards the rear of the car because of the rear mid-engine design. So be careful of that, because obviously you don't want to lift by those tie-down spots. So we'll get the car up in the air and get the wheels off and see what we're looking at here. So this is the front rotor, and once again we have a curved vane disc. You can see that they're angled, not straight, the vanes inside. This is the left side, so that's oriented correctly. And if we go to the other side of the car, on the right side of the car, we can see these are angled incorrectly. The fin should be angled backwards to blow more air out of the disc. So we have two left discs on the front of the car. That's why it's under 100 grand. So we have the brake pads out of the front calipers on the Z51 car. And you can see there's a big notch for noise, or the bevel, excuse me. For some reason, they have a wear sensor notch that's not used. But you can see the race pad that G-Lock makes, full pad coverage, full thickness. So there's some extra pad material, because brake pads, pretty good size, but you know, still not large. Okay, for now, we don't have a socket that can fit this caliper pin bolt. So we're just going to take the caliper off to get the pads out from the bottom. Took a minute on the other side to figure it out, but it's actually not that big of a deal. The other thing is, it looks like this isn't contained very well, so it's going to be a little dicey. We'll try to probably just replace this with some kind of regular bolt. I'm not sure what GM is doing there. Additionally, you see the pin's not going all the way through. This is a T40, so we want to pop these out now before we take the caliper off. I want to get the pistons back in on the caliper. So this part's actually pretty easy, because you can squeeze right here and retract the pistons. Now these pads are barely worn, so it's not going back much, but that's nice and easy. And you can't see the inside, so there you go. That'll give room for the new pads. So now we're going to break the caliper bolts loose. They're pretty tight. It'll be about 120 ooga-doogas. Not too bad. Lift with your legs. So this will take a minute. So this part's kind of three-handed. So we're gonna drop the caliper out, push the pads out, and push the new pads back in, and you got to get the pins back in to hold the pads in. So this is almost a two-person job. You'll see the pads are glued to the pistons. You got to crack that loose the first time. And now we'll push some new pads down in there. So you have to put it in. We'll do one at a time. And with my handy dandy friend here, it's easier, but you push the pad down to line those pins up and get them in there and get them started. Whoop. That's one. And now we'll do the inner one. We'll slide the pad down in, make sure it's in there. And same thing, push the pad down against the springs so we can make the pin. It started?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
There you go. So that's started. So now we just want to get the caliper back over the rotor. And just of note, if you're one person trying to do that, that looks pretty hard. You probably take the rotor off, reattach the caliper to the knuckle, then you have an easier way to push the pad up in there against those springs to get the pad started. And we retracted, so a little tighter getting over this time. Hopefully we made enough room. This is not even close. There we go. We'll start with caliper bolts. If you had a C8 Z51, you remember that kind of fun. It'll be a lot easier when we either get a socket for that, or really, I think just once I take it off, I'm sure it's a regular bolt that screws into the cross pin. And then you never have to worry about that again. And you'll do a normal brake pad change. We torque our caliper bolts. Get them on first. So it looks like it's all back together. We got the pins back in. And pads are in, everything looks fine, so we'll put it back together and go to the rear now. So back to reality now, the rear caliper is normal. So it's just simple, pop these pins out. There's a hold down spring, which is fine. You want the other pin out first. Sometimes you can push the pistons back in enough with your fingers, not even worry about it. There's a pad. And we'll take these over the bench and have a quick look. So the rear pads have similarly kind of some geometry. They're hacking out that area there to make this straight. A sensor notch that's unused, and I don't know, we'll put in the race pads and off we go. Make sure you have the pistons pushed back in enough. Pads will just drop in like normal. Make sure you get those all the way in on the detent. There. Done. All right, got the wheels back on, torque to 140 foot-pounds. I am tired. If you want to rent this car and drive around VIR, call Kaizen Autosport. Thank you very much. Subscribe, like, whatever you want to do.